Hi, we are Team 2, and we selected Abraham Lincoln as our leader to research. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States from 1861 to 1865 and led the nation through the Civil War, ultimately preserving the Union. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation and advanced the cause of freedom. He was known for his honesty, humility, and persuasive oration. His leadership mission was to preserve the Union and uphold democratic governance, while his vision was for a united nation built on liberty, equality, and justice for all. His mission and vision reflect his leadership being guided by moral authority rather than political expediency, and his strategic decision making being combined with empathy and storytelling.
Individual differences. A view of Abraham Lincoln through the lens of the Big Five personality traits. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, has been revered as one of our country's greatest presidents and a most eloquent speaker. He is one of the famous faces that graced Mount Rushmore, and he is remembered for the Emancipation Proclamation, leading the country through the Civil War, and inspiring those around him with his engaging oratory and rhetoric. His personal life was one that was peppered with tragedies that seemed to draw him into a desire to isolate. In this isolation, he found solitude in his voracious appetite for reading classics such as Shakespeare and Gibbon, and studying his Blackstone's Law book that he bought from a weary traveler traveling to Iowa who wanted to lighten his load. As one of America's great leaders, the most written about president of the United States, Lincoln is an intriguing candidate to analyze through the Big Five personality traits to discover what made him a revered leader.
Abraham Lincoln purposefully and successfully brought talent into his inner circle that enlarged his sphere of experience and housed opinions that were often contrary to his own. His unique ability to employ the strengths of his cabinet while maintaining his vision is an important lesson in leadership and a fascinating exploration of how personality traits shape a leader. Viewing his personality through the lens of the Big Five personality traits serves the purpose to look more closely at the nuances of his character. President Lincoln was very conscientious, as shown by his approach to leadership and commitment to both moral and political principles. He diligently studied military strategy during the Civil War despite lacking formal military training, which helps to showcase his responsible and goal-oriented nature. Lincoln had a way of keeping his goals at the forefront of his mind while employing the help of others to attain these goals. He seemed to embody the phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and he used this tactic to further the success of his presidential plans. His ability to hold strong in his beliefs while keeping others that disagreed with him in his cabinet shows that he was at least able to appear agreeable to move towards a larger goal. He is well known for having experienced depressive episodes and bouts of melancholy, especially near the times of his personal losses. While he was still able to manage his emotions effectively in public life, his emotional struggles that he experienced in life do suggest at least a moderate amount of neuroticism. Now, Abraham Lincoln rates high in openness. He listened to his rivals' impassioned opinions, and then he had the strength to make the ultimate decision, whether it was popular or unpopular. He had friends that were radicals and Republicans, and often found himself in a position where he could make no one happy. Nonetheless, he accepted his difficult role as leader and made difficult decisions. In the category of extroversion, Lincoln rates low. Lincoln seemed to disregard social norms for what brought him comfort and satisfaction, namely reading and studying. Now, social awareness was not at the top of his list of concerns, and this added to a lot of his marital woes. It seemed as if he often tried to escape the unhappiness of his marriage by retreating with a thick book. Nevertheless, when the obvious duties of speaking were required of the president, he was more than capable of inspiring and connecting with audience when he needed. Maintaining a united country was a key value to Abraham Lincoln, and we can see that from his leadership style. His stoic nature and dry sense of humor was sensed in the stories he would share. He didn't seek to argue, but sought to understand, and was driven by the promise of the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal and endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This cemented his support for the causes of the Union and the Republican Party because he believed that slavery violated this declaration. He valued education and spent his entire life self-educating and gaining knowledge through his voracious appetite for reading. Lincoln's biggest gift of all, the gift of oration, was hard-earned by many hours of legal books, Shakespeare, and Gibbon. Lincoln had a gift for writing and giving speeches that explained his vision and helped to prepare the hearts of a tenuous public that desperately needed unity. His Gettysburg Address and inaugural speeches mark some of the most poetically unifying prose known in our history. Abraham Lincoln, when analyzed through the Big Five personality traits, illustrates that being an effective leader requires applying your unique balance of traits and differences to attain your goals. Abraham Lincoln purposefully and successfully brought talent into his inner circle that enlarged his sphere of experience and housed opinions that were often contrary to his own. Abraham Lincoln's unique ability to employ the strengths of his cabinet while maintaining his vision is an important lesson in leadership and a fascinating exploration of how personality traits shape a leader. A major team challenge of the Republican Party was the Civil War and how the administration would unite a country that was already divided. 9 states had already seceded from the Union. President Lincoln influenced team dynamics by hiring his political rivals to his cabinet. Lincoln's explanation at the time was that these were the strongest men in the country. He declared that at a time of peril, the country needed to have the strongest men, and that he couldn't deprive it of those talents. A team of rivals? Who were this team of rivals? Lincoln's cabinet was made up from his previous political rivals. Seward, Chase, Bates, and later Stanton aided him during his presidency by providing healthy debate and development of strategy to navigate the Civil War. This shows us how Lincoln worked best, by keeping his mind sharp with debate and his heart warm with empathy for the other man's point of view. They may have started as his rivals, but even his most harsh critic, William H. Seward, who later became one of his closest friends, said that Lincoln was the best of us when speaking about him later in his presidency. William H. Seward was Lincoln's Secretary of State for both of his terms as president, 1861 to 1869. Seward had been his chief rival in the earlier Republican nomination and was a big critic of him. Seward was a former Whig Party member like Lincoln. Seward and his wife used their Auburn home as a stop on the Underground Railroad. Many runaway slaves, including Harriet Tubman, received money and assistance from Seward family on their journey to freedom. Lincoln had planned to announce the Emancipation Proclamation in July 1862. However, because he created an environment where all ideas and concerns were welcomed, Seward advised him to wait for the announcement until the Union achieved a significant military victory. Lincoln took his advisor's recommendation and announced the proclamation 2 months later, a decision that ultimately proved successful. In the book, Team of Rivals, Doris Kearns includes a map of the White House and its proximity to the homes of all the cabinet members. Especially close was Seward's home. Instead of staying home during the evenings, Lincoln would often visit his Secretary of State, William H. Seward, and they would have long conversations about military strategy and how the people of the South might be reacting to the news of war. In the end, these people came not only to respect Lincoln, but also to love him. In Team of Rivals, the author retells a story about Lincoln, where he accepted the resignation of Salmon Chase as Treasury Secretary, who did not really want to resign, but was trying to be dramatic. And Lincoln was able to show that he was tough, but also humble. Tough because by calling his bluff and accepting his resignation, he wasn't going to have Chase use passive-aggressive tactics to get his way. And humble because after he accepted Chase's resignation, he said publicly that he thought he would make a great Chief Justice. Lincoln had already come to believe Chase had fallen into two bad habits: wanting to be president and thinking he's indispensable to the country. He was still thinking of how Chase could be used to help the country. A short time after his resignation, Salmon Chase became the 6th Chief Justice of the United States. These stories show that Lincoln was an authentic leader and that Lincoln is in control of the situation and thinking about what is best for the country. Even though Chase had been exhibiting irritating behavior towards Lincoln and other cabinet members, and many wanted him gone, Lincoln was able to mentally cast him in a role where he could better serve the country. Lincoln was always a gentleman. Edward Bates was Attorney General from 1861 to 1864 and a former Whig Party member. He had been a slave owner, but had emancipated all of his slaves by 1851. Edward Bates had a special disdain for Lincoln's storytelling style and criticized his never-failing fund of anecdotes, but would later be quoted as saying, "Mr. Lincoln comes very near to being a perfect man, according to my ideal of manhood." Bates kept a diary, and biographers have found entries that express frustration with Lincoln's loose management style, which he felt left the administration with no system, no unity, no accountability, no subordination. Bates believed that the president had too good of a nature and was therefore an easy target to be taken advantage of. Lincoln had Edwin Stanton serve as Secretary of War starting in 1862, even though Stanton was a huge critic of Lincoln's. Fiery personality Stanton was known by the nickname of Mars after the god of war by the cabinet members. He disagreed with Lincoln often and loudly, but because they spent so much time at the War Department with Lincoln, they became trusted friends. He was there when Lincoln was assassinated and is famous for saying, "Now he belongs to the ages," moments after Lincoln passed away at the Peterson boarding house on April 15, 1865. Stanton would eventually be nominated to the Supreme Court by U.S. Grant, and one day before assuming office, he passed away. With such a diverse team, Lincoln needed to lay the framework for healthy debate. Lincoln's leadership demonstrated an exceptional ability to guide a team that is divided towards a shared mission. His personality traits of openness and conscientiousness helped foster a clear system of communication. His leadership skills and his transformational style of managing brought out the best in his team. Abraham Lincoln led a team of men that were in strong disagreement with him about the state of the Union and the way the country should be run. He even had people in his cabinet that had been slave owners. He was able to work effectively and carefully to communicate with the people of the country with his crafted speeches and military strategy, even though many people disagree with the path that he was taking. His leadership style was people who had diverse views, resulting in healthy debates to overcome egos for the collective goal of uniting a challenged country.
Lincoln motivated others through a strong moral purpose and clear vision. He framed the Civil War as a fight for democracy and equality, famously emphasizing government of the people, by the people, for the people. He showed empathy by meeting directly with soldiers and citizens, genuinely listening to their concerns, which built personal connections and trust. Additionally, Lincoln used storytelling and symbolism, parables and analogies that made his messages relatable and hopeful, motivating people to persevere. Lincoln's strategies had a profound impact on his followers. They boosted morale among soldiers and civilians during difficult times. His authenticity and humility helped build trust even across deep political divides. He inspired unity in a nation torn apart by conflict and strengthened people's commitment to shared democratic values. Through these approaches, Lincoln created a loyal and motivated following dedicated to preserving the Union. Delivered on November 19, 1863, the Gettysburg Address is a prime example of Lincoln's motivational skill. In only 272 words, Lincoln reframed the war as a moral test for democracy itself. The speech was brief, but deeply moving and memorable. It renewed the nation's resolve to finish the work of preserving freedom and equality for all Americans. Lincoln's motivational leadership left a lasting legacy. The Emancipation Proclamation redefined the nation's purpose by linking freedom and justice. His leadership set the standard for values-driven motivation. Even today, Lincoln inspires leaders to combine empathy with moral clarity to unite and lead effectively.
Week 4 was about leadership theories and the leadership style. Abraham Lincoln's leadership approach reflects a blend of transformational and servant leadership theories. Transformational leaders are known for inspiring others to transcend their own interests for the greater good, while servant leaders prioritize the growth, well-being, and success of their people. Lincoln embodied both, guiding the nation through its greatest crisis while consistently putting the country and his team before himself. One hallmark of his transformational style was his ability to communicate a compelling vision. He reframed the Civil War from being solely about preserving the Union to a moral battle for freedom and equality, which inspired citizens and soldiers alike. His speeches, such as the Gettysburg Address, were concise yet powerful, offering clarity in a time of uncertainty. Lincoln also demonstrated servant leadership through his personal humility and accessibility rather than isolating himself in a position of power. He met with citizens, soldiers, and political leaders regularly, listening to their concerns and incorporating diverse perspectives into his decisions. Several leadership theories align with his style. First off, you have the situational leadership theory, a contingency theory that suggests appropriate leadership style depends on followers' readiness or willingness and competence to accomplish a specific task. It includes 4 main styles: directing, coaching, supporting, and delegating. This can be clearly seen throughout different times at his presidency. Examples could include things like with an inexperienced general, such as General McClellan, early in the war, and this general was becoming increasingly insubordinate with Lincoln. Lincoln leaned towards a directing style when talking to this general. Now, for more trusted leaders such as Ulysses S. Grant, Lincoln used a more of a delegating style, which gave them autonomy to make decisions in the field. Also, President Lincoln has many traits from the trait theory of leadership that we also talked about. Some of these traits include integrity, empathy, and persistence. Week 5 was about Lincoln's organizational culture. Abraham Lincoln cultivated an organizational culture defined by integrity, unity, and resilience. Organizational culture is the shared values, norms, practices that shape how members of an organization interact and work together. Lincoln intentionally fostered a culture that could withstand political division and wartime stress, setting a tone of respect, moral conviction, and collaboration. A defining feature of this culture was his team of rivals, bringing together leaders of conflicting political ideologies to serve in his cabinet, rather than surrounding himself with loyal supporters. Lincoln prioritized talent and competence over personal alignment. This choice encouraged open debate and the exchange of ideas, ensuring that major decisions were tested against multiple viewpoints. In doing so, Lincoln reinforced a culture where disagreement was not a sign of disloyalty, but a means to reach a stronger and more informed decisions. Integrity informed the moral backbone of Lincoln's organizational culture. His leadership consistently aligned actions with the values he publicly championed. Most notably, the Emancipation Proclamation. Even under immense political pressure, he maintained the principle that the Union's preservation was inseparable from the case of human freedom. This steadfastness gave his team the public confidence in his leadership. The culture Lincoln built not only helped guide the Union through the Civil War, but also left a lasting example for leaders in any field. A strong organizational culture is rooted in shared values, open dialogue, and the courage to uphold principles in the face of hardship. Hello. During one of the most divided times in American history, Abraham Lincoln led the country through the Civil War, not with just strategy, but with heart. He showed emotional intelligence by staying in touch with the pain and fears of everyday Americans, as well as understanding the emotions behind the actions of his enemies. He didn't just surround himself with yes men either. Instead, he built a team of rivals, bringing in people who challenged him and saw things differently. This helped him make stronger and more well-rounded decisions. Even in the face of defeat and criticism, Lincoln stayed calm under pressure. He knew that panicking wouldn't help the Union cause, so he stayed steady and focused, even when things looked bleak. At the core of it all was his commitment to unity. He never gave up on the idea that the United States could come back together, and that belief guided his decisions. Through it all, he led with empathy and patience, always trying to understand others, and gave the country time to heal. Lincoln didn't just lead with power, he led with compassion and that made all the difference. Hello. Abraham Lincoln wasn't just a powerful leader, he was a master communicator. He used persuasion not to force ideas, but to guide people towards seeing the bigger picture. Whether it was convincing his cabinet, Congress, or everyday citizens, Lincoln knew how to make people think differently, often just by appealing to their sense of logic, morality, and hope. He also used reciprocity in how he treated others, giving people respect, listening carefully, and often offering political compromises, which earned him loyalty and cooperation in return. His authority didn't just come from his title, but from how he carried himself, and the people trusted his moral compass. He built social influence by staying humble yet firm, which made people want to follow him, even during the hardest times. And one of the most powerful tools was storytelling. Lincoln used stories and metaphors to make complicated or painful ideas easier to understand. They stuck with people, made them feel something, and helped inspire change. Through words, relationships, and influence, Lincoln didn't just lead a nation, he moved it. While Abraham Lincoln is remembered as one of the greatest presidents, his leadership wasn't without criticism, and some of the most serious critiques came during the Civil War. One major issue was the suspension of habeas corpus. Lincoln allowed people to be arrested without immediate trial, which many saw as a dangerous overreach of presidential power. He argued it was necessary to keep the Union together and stop rebellion, but critics worried it set a precedent that threatened civil liberties. It sparked real debate about how far a leader can go during a national crisis. Then there's the Emancipation Proclamation, which is often celebrated and rightfully so. It has some major limitations. It only freed enslaved people in the Confederate States, not in the border states that stayed loyal to the Union. So it didn't end slavery everywhere, but only for those in Confederate states. Lincoln had to make a political calculation. Pushing further might have lost some support from key states. While the proclamation was a turning point, critics argued it didn't go far enough in addressing the full injustice of slavery. And finally, Lincoln's legacy with Native American issues was much more complicated than most people realize. While he was fighting for freedom in one area, his administration still supported westward expansion, which often came at the expense of Native American lives and land. One of the darkest moments was the mass execution of 38 Dakota men in 1862, the largest government-sanctioned execution in U.S. history. Lincoln did reduce the number from over 300, but many still view it as a failure to protect natives' lives and recognize their humanity. So while Lincoln led with vision and made monumental progress, his presidency also came with tough choices and actions that still raise important questions about justice, freedom, and who get the benefit from them. Hello. So, looking back at Abraham Lincoln's leadership during one of the most difficult times in U.S. history, it's clear that he was not only effective but deeply impactful. He wasn't perfect, and some of his decisions, like suspending habeas corpus or the limits of the Emancipation Proclamation, they were heavily criticized. Overall, Lincoln led with empathy and intelligence and an unwavering commitment to unity. His ability to connect with people, persuade through storytelling, and staying calm under pressure left a legacy that still shapes how we define great leadership today. The biggest lesson we can take from Lincoln is that true leadership means doing the hard things for the right reasons, even when the path forward isn't easy or popular. This has been Team 2. Thank you so much for watching our video and have a good day.